Hello, friends. My name is Ganesh Kohli, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to share with you my entrepreneurial and business journey and to share with you some mantras and sutras that will allow you to manifest your own business goals, your own entrepreneurial goals, or for that matter, any of your life goals. I studied engineering and I lived a very, very simple life. I graduated and I had 2000 rupees in my pocket. I knew I did not want to do a job and I wanted to be, an entrepreneur. And I started with that. I started teaching and counseling. But I struggled like most people at that time would imagine. Teaching was not a very lucrative profession. Even though I was being entrepreneurial, there were a lot of challenges, and I went through this whole phase of about 8 years where I worked extremely hard and always was seeking work-life balance. It was almost like you are dead at work and you are alive at home, always trying to find that balance between work and life. And at that moment I did not understand or realize the fundamental flaw in this kind of thinking, where at work work became punishment, and the balance was when you got home and got some rest. I used to work 14-hour days, 16-hour days, and was struggling for this balance. Later on in life I realized that there is no such thing as work-life balance. It's an absolute myth that work is also life and life after work is also life. So as I began this journey and as I evolved on this path of entrepreneurship, the concept of work-life balance became a myth. Every day became a joyous experience. And I'd like to share with you some of my learnings through this period. So, dear friends, there are two ways, we often hear about the laws of business and the laws of nature. We always say that the laws of business are the tax laws and the legal framework and how you do business. We always learned that the laws of business are different and the laws of nature. Nature has different seasons, and there is gravity, which is a law of nature. There are so many other laws of nature that we learn, and we've always treated these separately. My profound realization over many years, my 23-year journey as an entrepreneur, was that they profoundly intersect. And I will share with you how and share some mantras with you. Essentially, what started for me as a struggle was, I worked really, really hard. I spent a lot of time working 14-hour, 16-hour days, traveling a lot. But I made only so much progress. I made some progress, but it was all hard work. It was physical work. And from 97 to 2006, there was only so much progress that I could make. But then something very magical happened. I actually got married about 3 years before 2006. And my wife had been telling me to meditate. And like most stubborn husbands, I did not listen to my wife. But I eventually listened to her. And in 2006, June, I started, some practices with meditation. I went to a camp, I started to meditate. And I felt, at that time, meditation was such a waste of time. In life, you have to be a go-getter. You have to go and work hard and shake everything up. And that's exactly what I was doing. And I was making progress. But I had no idea what magical outcomes could be possible until I began to meditate. Therein began, after June 2007, began the next phase of my evolution, which was for 7 years. From this about 8-year phase to a 7-year phase, where I went from hard work, which is what my focus was, hard work, physical. I was trying to create everything physically. I went to what I would call smart work. I was creating deliberately. I was intending certain things. And, I went from just being one or two people in my organization to a few more people. But I went from hard work to smart work. I went from physically creating to deliberately, now making the choices and creating deliberately. But then came another evolution. If I were to actually compare physical creation and deliberate creation, physical creation is where, you're doing really lot of hard work. You're swimming against the tide of the river. And in smart work or deliberate creation, you're swimming with the tide of the river. The next phase is what came to me after I met with my teacher, Dr. Newton Kondavati and Dr. Lakshmi of Quantum Life University in Hyderabad. I started to learn with them in 2013. In November was when I first started to learn with them. And at that time, I had no idea there was another level. So from hard work to smart work, I actually ended up with no work. I was now in a state of co-creation. So it was no longer about, all the lessons I was learning with Dr. Newton and Dr. Lakshmi. I went from hard work to smart work to no work. What I did was I started to share, my interests in all my organizations. The team began to expand. And while I was sitting at home and meditating and doing nothing, all of the companies were growing dramatically. I was only focusing on something that was happening inside of me. And that was very, very beautiful, friends. So as an entrepreneur, I always felt as a business person that it's, you have to go out in the open and struggle and fight and, have really, push everybody and, really go for it, etc. And I lived that life in phase one, which then in phase two became smarter. I was setting goals. I was having a better plan. I felt calmer. One of the things that really, really changed for me after I began meditation is I became calmer. Those decisions were not coming in a haste. They were not coming out of just achieving something. They were coming out of so much more clarity. And then when I had deeper insights in phase three, I realized that everything that I was creating was actually not just mine. It was actually belonging to all of us. I started to, really expand the team and started to co-create. The self-importance, my dear friends, started to go down. There was too much importance that I gave myself as an entrepreneur in the early years. And then I gave myself a little less important, and then I dropped that importance after a certain point. The more you chop the ego as an entrepreneur, the more we can grow as entrepreneurs. And so I would say this is a magical form of existence, and it is possible to actually follow the laws of nature, follow certain key principles that the universe has in business. Most people think that spirituality and physical creation have to be separated, that in business you cannot get goodness, etc. That is completely false, my dear friends. In my experience, I have in fact experienced the exact opposite. The more I move into this zone of deliberate and co-creation, the more things became beautiful in my life. And in this space, my dear friends, we essentially our intentions change. The intention was not, oh, I have to make money. The intention is I want to feel freedom. I should not have to sit in my office or my shop or my, in India, a lot of businesses, it's only in the family that they share. There is no freedom. They don't take holidays also so many times because they feel, and they want to have a son or a family member, a brother will look after the business. We are actually, if you think about our lives, In India, the way entrepreneurship has happened traditionally, it has all been family run, family owned. You know, to the point I'm reminded during my college days, I used to actually have this vada pav. You know, all of you would have had a vada pav. It is a patty with potato and the bread around it. And I saw that area where we used to have vada pav. You know, the great grandfather used to sell vada pav, then the grandfather was selling, then the father was selling, now the son is selling. You know, for centuries they were selling, or for decades they were selling vada pav. But you know, think about it. It was all because it was controlled. There was so much control. There was no freedom. Every day somebody had to be there. But think about the American vada pav. You know, McDonald's is selling everywhere in the world. That is also vada pav. But the fact is, there is co-creation there. There was a model of co-creation where you don't need to be in every shop, in every office that you go to. And so I learned about this. I learned that entrepreneurship was not about controlling things. Entrepreneurship was not about generating money. It was about generating, it was about experiencing freedom. It was about experiencing joy, growth. Those are the main intentions. That, we are free, that we are joyous, that we are growth. When that became my intention, that is when a lot of things started to shift, my dear friends. And what happened was, I was in the beginning, I was baking a 1 kg cake and I was eating it all myself. When I became smart, I, baked a 1 kg cake or a 2 kg cake, and I actually shared like very little, 100 grams with someone, with a few people. But then eventually, what I realized with CoCreation was I just basically gave away the baking of the cake and there were many people, tens of people together baking the cake. The cake was so huge that even at the end, if I got 50% of that cake, that was large enough. So earlier I was eating the full 1 kg cake. But then when we started to co-create, we created a 500 kg cake. Now if I only got 50% of that cake, I only got half. That is still 250 kgs. This is huge, too much for me to eat. Still had to share further. So very, very powerful that we go beyond this controlling nature when we are trying to create. And we have to I also realized that I did not have to prove anything to anybody after a certain time. That really, my beliefs got altered as I got in touch with my real nature, and I let the law of creation, the nature's law is you have to sow the seed and then the tree will come, and I let some of nature's laws take shape in my life. And really, prosperity manifested for me as an outcome of wisdom, my dear friends. So from what I got from, Dr. Newton is a student of Patriji and he such great masters. There is a lot of wisdom flowing through all of these great beings. And prosperity can follow wisdom. Prosperity is not the first step necessarily always that brings peace in our lives. So I experienced, my journey was, I had been successful, but I really understood what magic is possible in our lives when I let the wisdom flow in, the wisdom of all these masters, learned about meditation, learned to work on my own self. And from there, my dear friends, I created these 7 AHA Sutras. And I will share with you, actually this is a co-creation also, I should not say I created. It's a co-creation of the AHA movement. We created these 7 sutras, which I would like to share with you for an awakened entrepreneur. If you really want to, it is possible to be an awakened CEO, an awakened entrepreneur, an awakened leader, an awakened conscious leader, an awakened employee, but we have these 7 sutras that we can look at. First sutra, the AHA Sutra, is abundance and growth are a direct outcome of inner peace. All that I was able to manifest was because I was starting to become more and more peaceful within myself. Every day, morning, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, I was getting up, working on the inside. You know, the Buddha reacted or responded very differently to being abused as compared to the normal person, because the Buddha never reacted with anger, because there was no anger inside, there was only compassion. And so many times, whatever is inside us comes outside. If there is anger inside, anger will come out. If there is sadness, sadness will come out. If there is greed, greed will come out. If we really want to be successful entrepreneurs, peaceful, joyous, it is so important to work on the inside. The same situation comes in business, the same tax matter will come, the same conflict situation will come. But because something within us has shifted, we respond differently. I had many challenges before and after in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. The way I dealt with these friends was very different. I focused on inner peace. How is it affecting me? I did not say, you are wrong, that this person who is doing this to me is wrong, the government system is only wrong, they are corrupt people, etc. No, yes, there may be whatever problems outside, but the focus was never outside. When I pointed one finger there, I realized 3 fingers were pointing towards me. I started to work on the inside, and I realized that abundance and growth were a direct outcome of inner peace. That is the first sutra, my dear friends. The second sutra, the Aha Sutra for an awakened entrepreneur, is manifesting happens only through collaboration. Today, the work which I started as a lone wolf, as an individual, today that work has reached 80 plus countries. We have employees, we have so many co-owners of the enterprises that I had, I envisioned. All my creation became co-creation. Every vision that we saw, there are volunteers, there are people are resonating greatly. And so, friends, very important that manifestation happens, or manifesting, Sutra number 2 says manifesting happens only through collaboration. It's so important for us to collaborate. We were taught in school, from early stages, we were taught to compare and to compete. In first standard, second standard, third standard, fourth standard, school has destroyed our nature law. In nature, there is no competition. Actually, everything is so self-sufficient. We never had to compete for oxygen. You go out, everybody will get enough oxygen to breathe. There is abundance for everyone. But it is so important not to compare, not to get into conflict and competition. People think about business as a place to compete. Actually, business and entrepreneurship is a place to collaborate, is to come together. It is not a place, my dear friends, to compete. And that is very important for us to know. So that is our second sutra, which is manifesting happens only through collaboration. The third sutra is shared ownership leads to organic growth. This is a personal experience. The more you share, it is not one of our fundamental issues in the world today is we are trying to make something, one thing has to become great and the other is okay, whatever happens. There has to be a basic level of inclusion and equity. There has to be a basic level of sharing. And I started to give my shares. I started to give my holdings to people. And the more I shared, the more we grew. To be honest, in the last 7 years, we have grown dramatically. Not because I'm the only owner. I'm one of many owners of everything that I do or I am involved in. And it's a very beautiful way of existing, my dear friends. So shared ownership leads to organic growth. That is the third sutra. The fourth sutra, using the heart is as important as using the head. So friends, so many times in business, we just use the head. You have the Excel sheet, profit and loss. You are always kind of looking at things like that. I would really, share my experiences very different. Using the head, is basically marinating in certain thoughts. When you think a thought repeatedly, it becomes a belief. And you could actually manifest just from your head. You could actually manifest just from the head. That's possible. But there is another way of manifesting a reality, which is by combining the head and the heart. Using the heart is as important, because from the head the beliefs can come. Your repeated thoughts will become beliefs, and you'll manifest some of your beliefs. But the heart is where you have energy, because heart is where you have emotion. Emotion is nothing but energy in motion. If you're doing business, with what energy, with what emotion are you doing business? Are you doing business out of fear, out of anxiety, out of competition, out of malice? Those emotions are not nurturing emotions, my dear friends. If you are doing business out of love, out of compassion, people think it's not possible to do business out of love, that they have to be ruthless. This is completely false. This is a wrong notion of business. Any entrepreneurial venture, there is no need whatsoever to be ruthless. Having elevated emotions, having emotions of compassion, collaboration, love, joy, all of these things are very important. And when you have these emotions, you are using your heart, which is as important as using your head. So a combination of your heart, which is your energy, or your emotions, energy in motion, which is your emotions, and your head, which is your belief. Both of these, using the heart is as important as using the head. That's the fourth sutra, my dear friends. The fifth sutra, my dear friends, is profit, well-being, service, and spirituality converge for an awakened entrepreneur. So, it is so many times spiritual people think profit is a bad thing. That is not a good place to stand. After all, the same spiritual world, we need money also. Profit is not a bad thing. It is not an ugly word. Actually, it converges. Well-being, profit. Well-being also. We are feeling well. When we are feeling well, we do well. If we do well, we don't always feel well. So profit, well-being, feeling well, service. We have to serve. Any business that is contrary to nature's law, that involves, destroying nature, that involves destroying the environment, destroying the animal habitat, hurting any species, that involves, creating addictions in society. Any business is not aligned with nature, is not always going to bring peace. But when there is service at the core of a business, then you will see that it will grow, and you could be serving people in different ways. So profit, well-being, service, and spirituality. There is no contradiction, my friends, between spirituality and business. It is very much intersecting. I have grown my businesses purely by pursuing the spiritual path. And the more I progressed on the spiritual path, the more the business grew in the physical plane. So that's your fifth sutra: profit, well-being, service, and spirituality converge for an awakened entrepreneur. The sixth one is beautiful. It's one of my favorite sutras that we have created. Love and let go bring results. I talked about working from the heart. Actually letting go, not carrying the history or the baggage from the history with us. We learn from the past and move on in business. But I see constantly, so many times, people are still living in the same fear. There was a time when people used to not rent their houses or their offices because there was so much distrust. If somebody came in the house, then they will not leave. They will occupy it forever. But today things have changed. Today we don't need to just have a son or a daughter in our house to run a business. We can collaborate, my dear friends. We can let go of this old beliefs of distrust, of, only competition and bitter competition is the way, etc. It is possible to actually love and let go, and they will bring results. And of course, we practice these things. So that is your sixth sutra. And the seventh sutra, which I already shared with you, with no work. Effortlessness is the nature of all work. I shared with you earlier, where we are co-creating. Then it doesn't feel burdensome. It doesn't feel like every day I'm under pressure or whatever, I have to do, etc. So those are the seven sutras. The last one being effortlessness is the nature of all work. My dear friends, what I have shared with you is actually experiences. This is something that has manifested. My gratitude to Brahma Rishi Pitama Patriji and to my master, Dr. Newton Kondawati, and Dr. Lakshmi, who have really allowed me to reach this point in my life. Otherwise, I was a brash, angry person who was trying to just conquer the world. But I realized that as I conquered myself, the world was available to me in whichever form. And the more I worked on my inside, the more I was able to manifest things on the outside. So I encourage you to follow this path of an awakened entrepreneur, to do businesses, to lead with consciousness. And I do a lot of work in this area, and I'm seeing magical results. All the programs that I have done, all the work around awakened entrepreneurship, there are some magical results. So I invite all of our friends to pursue this path. Thank you very much for listening in. Thank you, dear friends.